He was the person that Proctor was willing to help, since Proctor is the one who was picked to replace Martin King, but Jesse is the one he trained. If you had spent all this time on putting him in place, and you ain't got nobody else around Martin. Now, Andy was supposed to be shot with Martin, but Andy wasn't on the balcony. He was on the floor, so he didn't get it. Ralph was inside, so he didn't get it. Key point, if you spend all that time, and Martin's about to say you are agent, do you understand that you got to press go on the assassination? Because now Martin is so continuously condemning you, you got wiretaps everywhere. And we know what he said about Jesse in front of everybody, but who knows what he said when it was just him and Ralph? How much more severe was his accusations? Such that if you didn't kill Martin, of white limitations don't run out on murder. Okay, let's let this run, and then we're going to go back and look at it again in straight speed. Look at.
He won a few times.
Right, look at Jesse. Martin still won't acknowledge him.
Usually when he finished his speech, he was covered.
Yes, go back. Now I ask you, when you look at it, is that Jesus or Judas? Jesus or Judas?
Times, and I saw him visibly shaking himself.
Nobody would touch him.
He was caught up in it. But
let it run. Let it run.
Caught up as he was that night.
Now we're on the day of.
How he spent the day.
Now Jesse done went and told them, look, you better move now.
Reteaching not violence.
I'm running out of time. This is the Last Supper.
Making sure that everybody was focused. I spent the day in court and convinced the judge that we could put together a nonviolent demonstration. When I came back to the motel, he said, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you all day long." And he picked up the pillow off the bed and he threw it at me. I was trying to explain to him that I'd been in court, and he said, "Don't you know you're supposed to call me? You need to let me know what's going on." I said, "Look, I was on the stand most of the day." And he was just feeling good. And every time I'd offer an excuse, he'd pick up another pillow and throw it at me. So after a little while, I just started picking them back. And everybody sort of picked up pillows, and we had just a very childish pillow fight. And then the last sentence. But he always liked to eat catfish at the little Rainbow Dam. And Miss Lady said about the platter. And Dr. Agatha was upset because she only said one platter. And Dr. King said, "Hush, ma'am." And put the plate in the bed. And said, "Everybody, get something off of this plate to eat."
See these men break up trying to tell that story.
Dinner was to be served at my home at 6 o'clock. I went to the room.
They brought him on the balcony at 3:06.
I said, "Oh."
He was shot with a 30-06.
He said, "Oh, no, I called the house and dinner is not until 6, so we are in no hurry." I said, "Oh, my goodness." But by doing that, it gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour of his life in room 306. He and Ralph Abernathy and myself. Then he and I went on the balcony. Ralph was still inside. And he was greeting people he had not seen.
I was in the parking lot, and we were suggesting that it was cool, and maybe he ought to go back and take a top coat with him, just in case.
I heard him above me.
It's my man, Hosea.
And we had a limousine. I could touch the limousine. Had been loaned to us by one of the local funeral homes. And I heard a voice, the guy who was driving the limousine. He said, "Dr. King." Dr. King said, "Yes, Joe." He said, "Although the car is on, it's chilly. I recommend you get your coat." And the last word he said in this was, "Okay, Joe, get my coat." And all of a sudden said, "Pow!"
Stop. Oh, stop. Go back. Key point. Let's go back. There's the maid right there we were looking for. There's the cart. Oh. Okay, let's freeze it at the highest point where Jesse's back is in the pit. Right there, stop. There we go. There's Jesse Jackson. There's the maid. There's the cart. There's the white boy, Lau, L-A-U-E, head of the community strike, a member of the Community Relations Service of the Justice Department, which spies on racial tension. His boss was Roger Wilkins, the nephew of Roy Wilkins. There's Muriel McCullough, the FBI, CIA, Memphis Police Department informant, who now works for the CIA. There's Martin King laying there with the towel over his face. Brother, I appreciate this pointer. This really helped out a lot. There's Ralph. There's Andy. Now, why is Jesse running up this way when everybody else came up that stairway and went that way? Because he had to make sure that rooms 316 and 317 didn't have no remnant of invader running out of it. Remember, he had just, see, that could have been the invaders running down that ramp right there. And when those people start that phony pointing, maybe the invaders might have went, no, down there. You understand? Because the invaders had what? Okay. Now, there's the maid. There's the cart. You see that cart? There are the wheels. You understand? At 6 o'clock, you ain't changing no beds and no motel? Check. Okay, let's let it run. There's a good shot of McCullough. There's Martin with the towel over his face. There's Martin again.
I looked up and didn't see him on the balcony, except that I saw his shoes sticking out the end of the balcony. All of the police, instead of going to where the shot came from, they were all coming to see what happened. So the picture on the balcony was us trying to say it came from over there.
Stop. There we go. That's good. There's that phony point. There's Jesse's head right there, making sure that he ran up there and gave a phony pointing. Now, here's the problem with the people pointing. All of the people pointing were this way, looking up to Martin. The shots came from behind them, whether from the bushes or from the rooming house, it was behind them. Not one single person said they turned around and saw somebody at the rooming house. Those that even saw anybody, Solomon Jones, Earl Caldwell, New York, saw somebody moving in the bushes. Check. So how is it that those with their back turns suddenly become so definitive on something they didn't even see? You understand? It's not logical that they're primary sources for a focus. Okay, we can turn the lights down. It was a script, right? So, and Andy's recanted his false pointing.
And covered him from his neck down. Someone had a towel put to it. Blood was just everywhere.
I went out in that yard and I started walking. And all...
Now listen how mad he was.
All the hatred in my life, which was a lot of hatred, came up in me. I went to reach into the air and take molecules, protons, electrons, and make me a gun and kill me some white people. I thought those white
That's my man.
They came running close there. And I just thought, God is going to kill. I want to kill. I'd have died to kill. And I started thinking,
Okay, now watch this. After so much pressure being put on Jesse Jackson, Tim Russell of Meet the Press puts Jesse on April 5th, 1998, and takes him right back to that moment we just looked at. And who did Martin say speak for him that night? Who? Okay, listen to this. Turn it up.
But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like everybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain.
Jesse hollering, go ahead, go ahead. The loudest affirmator, you know. Now,
as he concluded his speech, he walked behind, and there, as you see...
Stop.
On the shoulders.
Now, what's happening? NBC, Meet the Press, the most watched Sunday news program, goes back to this moment that we're out teaching is a point of distrust and evidence of Martin's dislike to Jesse. They go right back to that spot, put him right on Rockefeller's NBC, toss that ball right up, and say, Jesse, now when I toss this ball up, I want you to stuff it home. So he puts a circle around Jesse's head and a circle around Martin's head, calls it close, and says, you were one of Martin's closest associates. What did Martin King say to you the night before he died? What's up, Black?
Louis Jackson. What did you say to Dr. King at that moment? Did you recall?
Yeah, back it up and get that sound in there. And Jesse gets to holding his eyes all up funny like in the negotiator. He gets to...
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the Lord.
And as he concluded his speech, he walked behind, and there, as you see, tapped on the shoulders are one Jesse Louis Jackson.
Highlights two faces and wipes Ralph out.
It's difficult to express it because I think we were all crying. It's different in that the minister sitting at the right, Reverend Ben Hooks, Reverend Count Lovers, men were crying. It was kind of different. And like we realized he was under this burden, like he had relieved himself. So he tried not to come to church to speak, but he'd ask did he come to speak. I said, and this was that night to go with me. So we went together.
Stop.
And the crowd.
What did he say? He said, as you know, it was men crying, Ben Hooks and Billy Kyles. And as you know, he asked me to make that speech that night. And I said, I'd only make that speech if I can take Ralph with me. Now, here's the point. There would be no need to do no stupid stuff like that unless something else was going on that compelled the need to give him a chance to reconstruct history to protect his face from the faceless people who got the facts. There would be no need to do this. It just wouldn't be a need. Okay, let's go back. Let's hear it one more time, and then we'll pull that one out.
And Dr. King came, so he got up there without notes and gave a very formal...
No, you got to go back a little bit.
Definitive.
And this is the book, The Bureau, that William Sullivan wrote, where he says this Proctor, not Pierce.
Because I think we were all crying. It was different in that the minister sitting at the right, Reverend Ben Hooks, Reverend Count Lovers, men were crying. It was kind of different. And like we realized he was under this burden, like he had relieved himself. So he tried not to come to church to speak. And he actually asked me to come to speak. I said, one minute, Reverend Abernathy will go with me. So we went together. And the crowd cheered, and Ralph said, Jesse, this ain't...
Oh, yeah, listen. No, let that go. He says, Ralph says, Jesse, this is Martin crowd.
The church, and called Bernard Lee and Dr. King.
And then he says, and I went and called Bernard Lee. Instead of saying, I said, Ralph, if you ain't going to make the speech, don't call Martin, I'll make the speech. He says, Ralph says, this ain't our crowd. And I said, let's call Martin.
That was just weeping and wailing. And yet, eerie at the end, because he almost foreshadowed his own demise.
Okay, this is what you do. Put it on fast forward. Just let it run. Yeah, just let that run a second. And now this is a key point. How hard have they tried to maintain and protect one of the people that they know was in on the assassination? And in 1977, this is from the book called The Man to See. It's by Evan Thomas, and it's on Edward Bennett Williams, a white man who used to own the Baltimore Orioles. If you read that book by Spike Lee on the Malcolm X movie, Captain Joseph talks about Elijah Muhammad going to Benny Williams to try to get the men out of jail who were allegedly accused of shooting Malcolm X. So he was known as a real fix-it white man who could fix a case in a minute. Big time white boy. Also chaired the president's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. It's like the outside intelligence people on the inside of the government. Even at one point rumored to be deep throat. That's right, yeah, just let it run. That's Posner. Stop. Let's see if we stop that. Let's go back a little bit. Let's show the face of Gerald Posner, the little mop-headed white boy. Right there. Here we go. Turn on. Let's go a little slow. Not there. That's the Mason Temple. Stop him right there. That boy right there, Gerald Posner. He wrote this book right here, Killing the Dream. He wrote this book, Killing the Dream. And on the back of his book is that picture with Jesse, Martin, and Ralph, with Martin looking real puzzled. Can you see that? Okay. And in his book, Killing the Dream, he tries to help out Billy Kyles. Because in William Pepper's book, Orders to Kill, he says that Kyles is a Memphis Police Department informant. So Posner, he's going to defend Billy Kyles, and he puts this in his book. He says, Mike where? He said Jordan came to the lecture? He says here, Kyles told, in his book Orders to Kill, William Pepper raises the strong inference that Kyles might have been an FBI informant. It's degrading and insulting, quote, Kyles says, about the author Pepper's accusations. It casts an aspersion over my 40 years in the civil rights movement. I saw how Pepper operates. Now, he says that he's appalled that Pepper called him an FBI informant. Check. But what did I say Pepper called him?
An FBI informant?
No, I said that Pepper accused him in this book, Orders to Kill. See, you got to listen to them somatically. See, they're going to deny something, but they ain't going to deny what they were accused of. In Orders to Kill, this book, William Pepper says that Kyles, he talks to the police chief, Sam Evans, who was running things then. He said Kyles was one of my informants. Billy Kyles was an informant. Billy Kyles is the one that told the police that Martin King don't need no protection that day. Okay? Billy Kyles is the one that made sure Martin King had his tie on. It was the briefing at 4:30 after Ray was checking in at 4 o'clock that said that friendlies will not be wearing ties, coding the people who were on the government side in the assassination scenario would not be wearing a tie. One guy that night was in an argument with Martin King because he was just insisting that he was not going to wear a tie to go to dinner. Who was that? Jesse Jackson. So much so that the argument is what held Martin King on the balcony so the shooting could go down after Kyles stepped away so they could get a better shot. Check. But my point here is that Posner defends Kyles as not being an FBI informant. The only problem was he was accused of being a Memphis Police Department informant. I mean, to me and you, an informant is an informant. But when you're somatically denying something, make sure it matches the accusation. Check. Let's see. There we go. Now, I said we just wanted to show Posner. Okay, you can let it fast forward. Okay, now, very important point. You can turn the lights up a second, because it'll take me a minute for that to get to the spot I need. In 1977, this is from that book, A Man to See, on Edward Bennett Williams. And this is Edward Bennett Williams says that Jesse Jackson came to see him because he thought he was in trouble with the U.S. government for misappropriating $1 million of the Push XL money. Page, for the record, page 464. When the establishment turned on Jackson, he came to Williams. In 1977, Senator Hubert Humphrey had seen a piece on 60 Minutes describing Jackson's attempts to motivate inner-city youth to get an education. Humphrey urged HEW Secretary Joe Califano. Now that's important that he was head of HEW, now Department of Health and Human Services, because Joe Califano worked for the U.S. Army at the time Martin King was assassinated. So he was he was the legal advisor to the Secretary of the U.S. Army, and the Secretary of the U.S. Army was Cyrus Vance. His military attaché was Al Haig, and his legal counsel was Joe Califano. Not one single book on any King assassination or Kennedy assassination appropriately brings up the role of Vance, Haig, and Califano. So now Califano is on the inside, having been an assassin. Now he's going to help Jesse Jackson, having been an assassin. And Jesse Jackson goes to Califano. It says Jackson gratefully asked Califano for $25,000 grant. Califano told him he needed, quote, $1 million. Now, how many white people you ever met? You asked them for a quarter and they gave you $100. You ever met a white person do that? So it's strange. Jesse would walk into the government, ask for a $25,000 grant. Califano told him he needed $1 million and then proceeded to give the black leader $6 million. Of the $6 million, he misappropriated $1 million. Now the feds got him for misappropriation of funds. He's $1 million missing. Reagan becomes the president. Jesse gets scared. He asks Edward Bennett Williams to talk to Reagan to cut him a deal on the $1 million. Edward Bennett Williams says, when the federal auditors asked to look at Jackson's books early in the Reagan administration, they found chaos. Jackson's organization, Push XL, see, you saw that other thing said Rainbow Coalition. When Push had to pay back the money, he left the leaned organization, L-I-E-N, lean, like lean on your debt. He left the organization that had a lien on it and went to Washington and set up another organization. When Push paid back the lien, he leaves Washington and sets up Push Rainbow Coalition. Check? Okay, because you got to watch him. He's a magician. But the white man is his Merlin. Jackson's organization, Push XL, was unable to account for $1 million of the money. The matter was referred to the Justice Department. Jackson came to Williams claiming that he was a victim of a vendetta by the Republicans. The case was dragging on, producing unflattering newspaper stories at a time when Jackson was trying to raise money for his 1988 presidential campaign. And Williams says that when he talked with the Reagan administration, he said quite the contrary. They were not only not trying to arrest Jackson, but had favorable viewpoints of him, so much so that they cut a deal to pay back $550,000 of the misappropriated money at $125,000 a year. And again, as I said earlier, that's when Jesse left Chicago, went to D.C. Just a case in point. The only point to that is no black man would ever be allowed to pay back a misappropriated grant when Abernathy's son just went down for $1,500. Now, I just want to keep that in line. Now, let's go back to something else very critical. Washington Post story. This story is dated July 12, 1999. And the story, which I've now collaborated from the declassified documents that I have, FBI examined private life of King's successor. It says that after King died, the FBI began to investigate Coretta Scott King, Ralph Abernathy, and Andy Young. They emphatically said, we cannot trust these three, and we must do everything we can. They dropped the investigation of Coretta. They then went on to do to Andy and to do to Ralph what they had done to Martin. That was on April 12th that they signed the memo. On April 12th, I'm going to show you Jesse Jackson announcing that every time there's a crucifixion, there's a resurrection. saying that he is the resurrected man. Okay, what's that other tape you got there, Mr. Brown? Let's put this one in. Okay, let's put that one in and take it backwards a little bit. There's no other tape that back there that you have? And that one is still rolling? Okay. Now, Jesse's a strong proponent of the no Raul theory. And again, I showed you when I was here last.
We were totally dependent on Dr.
Yeah, turn the lights down. Now run it backwards. Run it backwards. That's Jackie saying that when the assassination went down, Jesse called her. And Jesse said, Jackie, Martin's dead. You're going to hear about it, but Martin's dead. And Jackie, she says, well, what are we going to do now, Jesse? She didn't say, how's Coretta? She didn't say, how's everybody else? She didn't say, is anybody hurt? She said, Jesse, what are we going to do now? Something you want to tell me? Okay, gotcha. Okay, and in this picture, now, yeah, this is Jesse announcing he's available for leadership. But just keep going back, because I want to put this in context. Oh, there's the white man, Don Rose. He's very important, because Don Rose, the white man, just stop it. Freeze. Oh, right there. Hold him up against the wall. Don Rose, great. His name, you all don't know him. I'm from Chicago. Don Rose is the white man that you see when you black to get the white media to report on you. You don't go call NBC, you don't call CBS, you call Don Rose, and he gets the media. When I was attacked and fired out of the mayor's office in Chicago, it was Don Rose who coordinated the white media's attack on me, which came May 1st, the Illuminati birthday, 1988. Don Rose is the man that Jesse Jackson left town to meet up, who put him on the Today Show the next morning after Martin was killed to start the discussion that Jesse is the heir apparent to Martin King. And you'll hear him say, I told Jesse, and we reinforced each other, that Jesse was the likely choice. Well, excuse me, Mr. White Man. Are you in the SCLC? And doesn't it seem odd, Mr. White Man, that outside of the FBI, you're the only other white man that feels it's your job to pick the black man to run the black organization? See, it takes a lot of arrogance for me to stand here and say who's going to be head of the next ADL. Lieutenants of Satan. That would be like, well, you ain't even in the group. You can't even vote them in. But everybody don't know Don Rose. He's another one of those white people in the Jewish religion that got their fingerprints on the King assassination. And you don't know him. There used to be something in Chicago called Triple C. And Don Rose was the front man behind Al Raby, who was one of Martin King's associates, one of Harold Washington's associates, who died writing the resolution for the Black Jewish Coalition condemning Steve Coakley on November 25th, 1989. Al Raby dies laying on the resolution condemning me. Whatever there was struck his ass dead with a heart attack at 155 pounds, 5'9". Okay, now let's keep going backwards. Let's just keep going backwards, because I'm going to show you Jesse in the courtyard. Now remember, we saw the people falsely pointing. For the record, in this picture is the man Raul, who's picked out of a lineup by a white woman named Gregory, and Raul is standing next to Lee Harvey Oswald, who's standing next to Clay Shaw. Point being that the people who killed in the Kennedy came around for the King. Okay? Same squad. Notice Jesse, does he have a tie on? Now remember we heard, stop right there. That's Calvin Moore. Oh, stop right there. Look at Jesse, no tie on. That ain't important yet. That's Ben Branch. Jesse wouldn't wear a tie that night. The briefing to the military men is friendlies will not be wearing ties. Ralph had on a tie. Martin was made to put his tie on. But Jesse emphatically wasn't going to wear no tie. And when we look at the people in the courtyard, notice who ain't wearing ties and who is. If you get to King video number 1, you'll see the people without the ties ducking when the camera comes. For the things you're seeing us do now, that's in King Assassination number 2 in the video. The only audio back there is a tape called King Assassination 99 or Jackson's role in the King Assassination. They're both the same tape. Okay, keep going backwards a little bit. Now, Jackson's in the courtyard at that moment, but all the staff is at the hospital. Jackson told everybody don't talk to the press. As soon as everybody left, he started talking to the press. Notice the shooting was in the light, and now everybody's gone. It's in the dark. Very important. Okay, let's hear Andy starting right here.
A jar. And started scraping up the blood and said, you know, and crying. It was Martin's precious blood. This blood was shed for us. It was, you know, it was weird. But people freaked out and did strange things. Jesse put his hands in the blood and wiped it on the front of his shirt. And it was, and what do you do?
You tell the truth.
In a moment like that.
Tell the truth.
Abernathy, Young, and others went to the hospital.
Notice nobody's giving a statement.
Where the media began to swarm.
Look at Jesse.
Yes, sir.
Did you hear what he said? Stop in a second. Jesse's saying in his southern accent, I need me a ride to go see Dr. King. Anybody got a ride I can go see Dr. King? Now the staff done left with the body. Ralph's in the ambulance with Martin. The rest of the staff's in the cars behind the ambulance. The police, who have cut off all of Memphis, are moving this procession. Are moving the procession towards the hospital with a police escort, since all the roads are closed. Now, there's a tape back there. It might be one. I don't know if there is one. I don't think there is one. Coakley TV. But I did a cable show in Chicago laying out the King assassination and Jesse's role. And I said this for the record before. Jesse saw the program. And when Jesse, for him. Because as I mentioned, as Jesse would see me in the public, all my friends go, whoa, here come Jesse. Whoa, Steve, see, it's going to be fireworks. And then they watch Jesse run around me. And I'm saying, if I'm talking about him, just like if you was talking about me, I'll hunt your ass down. You would never see me run from somebody dogging me out. Especially if it's unrighteous. Jesse's asking for someone to take him to see Dr. King. Now, he could have rolled with the rest of the staff, but he didn't ride with the rest of the staff because it wasn't but two phones coming through the switchboard and out, and the one payphone. Jesse runs to the one payphone, calls his wife, then calls Coretta. So can't nobody get to the phone because Jesse on it. So the staff go. Everybody says no talking to the press. They all leave. Jesse sees they all gone. Knows he's looking around. Can I get a ride to see Dr. King? He know ain't nobody going to take him but another staff member. After he says it long enough, ain't nobody to take him. The press says, come on, Jackson, talk to us. Go.
Would you tell me just what happened so we can get this film in, please?
Jesse always senses the moment. And it was an epical moment. And he was there.
The black people's leader, our Moses, the work from the 400-500-year leader, has been taken from us by hatred and bitterness. Even as I stand at this hour, I cannot even allow hate to enter my heart at this time, for it was sickness, not meanness, that killed him.
Stop. Now let's take that comment. It was sickness, not meanness, that killed him. Versus Hosea saying, I was so mad I could take protons, neutrons, and kill me some white folk. But immediately, like Bevel, Jackson then forgave people he don't even know who they are. See, it's something you give an absolution and ain't even nobody in the confession box. You might as well forgive Casper the ghost. But he's already forgiven. Don't worry. Don't mess with him. Because it ain't nothing. It was meanness, hatred, or some old bullshit. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm sorry, fellas.
Farmer crying, hollering, oh God. And I immediately started running upstairs to where he was, and I caught his head. And I tried to feel his head, and I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you
stop. Jackson gets up there, now that everybody's gone, and begins to say, I was the last person to talk to Dr. King. And I held him in my arms, and I said, Dr. King, can you hear me? Dr. King, can you hear me? And he never touched him. He never touched him. See, he used that statement to say that's how he got the blood on his shirt. But Andy just told you how he got the blood on his shirt. What did he do? He did this. He did this. You catch that? Yes, sir. Jesus or Judas? Okay, so now Ralph Abernathy was the only person to hold Martin, just to be clear. And Ralph held him from the moment of the balcony till they put him on the stretcher. Ralph was the only one in the ambulance. Ralph was the only one in the operating room. Ralph was the only one at the autopsy. And you will cry when you hear Ralph Abernathy say, when they take that saw and cut open Martin King's brain, and he says, and I was looking there on that gurney at my buddy, and when they cut his head, I knew my buddy wasn't in that body anymore. And on that last speech, Martin King, before he makes that, I've been to the seen the glory to come in the Lord, he turns to Ralph Abernathy and he tells the audience, I want you to know something here tonight, that my best buddy in the whole wide world is Ralph Abernathy. And why did he have the need to tell everyone who he loved as his friend unless he felt someone trying to falsely plant themselves as that person? And again, since Jesse was 6 in the order, it was no way he was the heir apparent, and Martin had already carved out the structure of the organization. They all knew it was Ralph after Martin. Al Sampson could come up here and tell you how many times Martin ingrained. No, don't do it. Let's go here, because we're running out of time, and I'd rather have you see this than hear me.
To hold his head. By that time, while the rest of King's aides huddled through the night at the motel, Jackson rushed back to Chicago, where rage was already sweeping the city.
Stop. The cable show I do in Chicago, I'm straight up down, seeing all over Chicago. Jesse watches the show. But in the show, I mentioned Al Sharpton inspired me. Jackson calls Sharpton and accuses him of inspiring me to attack Jackson. Sharpton says, well, what did Coakley say? And Jesse gave him every detail. Sharpton said, and I wrote it down. He said, and then I went to see Reverend Claude I'm going to say Claude Wyatt. He said, I went to see Wyatt T. Walker, who was SCLC's field director at that time. And when he told Wyatt T. Walker what I said, Wyatt T. Walker said, protect Coakley. Don't let nobody mess with him. And tell Coakley that if Jackson ever attacks him or harasses him about that analysis, just ask Jesse to tell Coakley how he got out of Memphis on the night of the assassination, since the planes, the boats, the trains, the buses, and the cars were all cut off. When I mentioned that to Dick Gregory right before he came here a couple of weeks ago, Dick said, well, you know what happened, don't you? The FBI called the airport and let one plane out. One plane that had one Negro man on it, who got away from the other saying he was sick. Jesse says, well, you know, when they had the investigation, they never talked to me. Nigga, you left. You wasn't there. And that's when Don Rose says, and Jesse and I began to plan his resurrection. Then you're going to see Jesse at April 12th say, I'm ready for leadership now. And only 4 days after that, the FBI set up the plan to attack Ralph Abernathy and Andy Young and Coretta Scott King, with no plan whatsoever to attack Jackson, who's far faster, whose future was far higher than those donkeys and those mules, that thoroughbred would have been the one to stop unless he was yours. Okay, let's go.
When we were going to get in the car, it was really a silence, you know. It was who's going to speak first, you know, because I didn't have the words to say, and he didn't know what to say. And when he came home, he got in the bed with his shoes on and the shirt. And he just laid in the bed.
In public, Jackson had an altogether different demeanor. It was as if he could see his destiny opening up before him at last, and he rushed toward it. 14 hours after the shooting, he appeared on the Today Show. Later that day, while listening to the solemn tributes at the Chicago City Council's memorial service, Jackson tapped Mayor Daley on the shoulder and asked to speak. Pointing to his shirt, Jackson said, "This blood is on the chest and hands of those who would not have welcomed King here yesterday." Then he called for calm in the city and end to the rioting. Meanwhile, at Jackson's directive, a movement publicist was booking interviews on Chicago TV shows.
They were falling all over themselves to get Jesse, particularly as the word got out later that morning that Jesse had returned to Chicago and was wearing clothes stained with Dr. King's blood and was appearing before the city council and so forth.
Don Rose accompanied Jackson to the tapings, the two men riding from studio to studio in the back seat of a car.
He was thinking very clearly, thinking ahead, thinking of, frankly, his own career, the future of the movement, and his role within it. And we were both reinforcing each other with the view that Jesse was a very logical successor to Dr. King.
When I see you here so much alive, I ask him what to do. Well, sir, I am available now. I'm more convinced than ever that every time that there is a crucifixion in right and righteousness, that inevitably and universally there is a resurrection. That is the
King aides, long resentful of Jackson, saw his behavior as brazen opportunism. They were already angry that he had spoken to the press in the hours after the assassination, and furious that he had so dramatically inflated his own part in the story of King's final moments.
A lot of those resentments that had been buried in the movement and that allowed us to work alongside each other, but never got expressed in the emotion and frustration of Martin's assassination.
Now watch Coretta, watch Jesse walking in front of her. Jesse's walking in front of her at her own funeral. Look at him walking in front of her, and watch him turn around and look at her, and she turns her head.
As their story went, King had
Watch this.
Jackson, told him to go do his
Look,
own thing. And
she sees him looking, turns her head. He turns back, she turns back. That'll be in the tape. You can slow it down and look at it. Cut.
He remembers King.
Stop. Now watch this. Watch this. This is Pepper's book. Let's turn the lights on real quick. Now we're running down on time. I got to talk real fast. Page 246 of Pepper's book. In 1968, Ernestine Campbell and her husband owned the Trumpet Hotel, which abutted the Lorraine. No one has ever talked to her or asked her about what she saw on the fateful afternoon. Ernestine says she left the hotel and started home just before 6 p.m. Driving her gold bronze Cadillac up Butler and turning right on Mulberry, as she passed the Lorraine driveway on Butler, she saw Dr. King standing on the balcony. She didn't hear anything because she had the car windows up and the radio was on. As she turned the corner onto Mulberry, she looked up and saw Dr. King lying on the balcony. She thought he had had a heart attack. She stopped for a minute, wondering why people weren't running up to the balcony. Her attention was in particularly drawn to Jesse Jackson, whom she said had one foot on the first step of the stairway, looking up to the balcony while bent over, putting something into a suit bag. Then Don Rose, the white man that you just saw, when I started following that theme, I then found in the book Jesse by Michael Frady, Don Rose, the white boy you just saw, he said Rose arranged appearances on 2 or 3 local programs, and the next day the two of them rode from station to station, sitting in the back seat of this car they had available to him with the driver. Jackson was attired in a dashiki, recalls Rose, although his blood-smeared sweater, quote, I think he also had it with him. He had some kind of tote bag, and he just wouldn't let it go. Now, he's noticing Jesse's up in Chicago, and he's got a bag, and he won't let it go. And we got the woman. Oh, that's a funny way to put it, huh? Says, if you want to sell tapes, you better stop now. I understand. Russ said he didn't do it. But see, I just killed you. Who gave you that note? Okay. Let me just end this with showing, and I guess you all saw it. I don't need to show you the Kyle's thing. Y'all saw that. I would have put that in the record on the tape, but you all got that on the record in the tape. Again, if I was to show you these house assassination documents, and you were to look at the line of questioning, here's from one of the FBI documents. Ralph Abernathy and Andy Young also became bureau targets. Shortly after the assassination, the field instructed to report any information of possible immoral activities of King's 2 associates. Well, Jackson was ready for leadership. Why were you chasing Abernathy and Young? If Jackson is the one announcing he's ready to go. May 24th, 1968, New York Times. They touted him as the next great black leader for all of America. And as Barbara Reynolds made a note, that then led the way for over 1,115 articles touting Jesse Jackson as the next leader for black America. Now again, never in the history of the white man have they ever treated a black man with such exalting nature. Never. There's never been such a person. And last thing in closing, on the question of Proctor and not Pierce, and I'm closing it out. When Jesse was made ambassador to the Africa, he is the ambassador to Africa, all of Africa. Jesse Jackson is the ambassador to all of Africa for democracy. In any case, Jackson also closely tutored in the elements of King's vision by several North Carolina A&T professors, especially by A&T president Samuel Proctor, who had been a fellow student of King's at Boston University and remained a counselor to him. A stocky man with a large, calm, heavy face who became something like Jesse's spiritual Merlin during those Greensboro days. He kept throwing King up to me, says Jackson, how King was able to do what he was doing, and he taught me how to be like that. Proctor remembers that, quote, Jesse was very moved by the image of Martin Luther King, and it was not long before he entered into what would prove to be a central fixation of his life, to be like Martin King. But please, Jesse, you didn't have to kill him.
It was much deeper than a simple root.
You didn't have to kill him to make it so.
All right. In the sense that he never talked about it like that.
Brothers and sisters, please
What happened was,
give it up for Brother Steve Coakley. Once again, give it up for Brother Steve Coakley for bringing it straight, bringing it to us, telling us what time it is. You're hearing it clearly, the real deal. We're clearing up our own evidence. We need everybody to hold hands, brothers and sisters. We're going to do our African affirmation. But this is what we're talking about when we break the chains of white supremacy. You get your own act together. You can do it. We can do it. Brother Coakley has demonstrated that over and over again. All right, brothers and sisters, we're an African people, robbed of our name, robbed of our languages, robbed of our religions, robbed of our culture, robbed of our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, our selfhood, our nationhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise never to fall again. Up, you mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Thank you, brothers and sisters.